It's the Growler with PD and J. Here to analyze for you today. From Growler Best to Jay's got stats. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Growler Podcast.
All right. Welcome into the latest edition of PD and J on the Growler. Paul Ahner Jr. here with Jay Morrison. I am here stationed in Palm Beach, beautiful Palm Beach, Florida. And Jay, you are in also beautiful and delightful in its own way, Hamilton, Ohio. How things?
In its own way, in every opposite way of Palm Beach. So, yeah, a little jealous that you're down there, but things are good here. It's a nice day. It's a nice sunny day up here. Not as good as Florida, but good to be with you here to talk about all that's going on down at the owners' meetings.
There has been a lot that's been going on down here at the annual league meetings, owner meetings down at the Breakers, which is got to be the swankiest hotel / resort / mecca of happiness on earth. I mean, it is just unbelievable. On the water, every amenity you could ever imagine. The NFL does what the NFL does, man. They do it right. And when they're catering to their very rich, very impactful owners, they do it real right. And so we get to be the beneficiary of that for a couple of days. But the news of me enjoying the swanky lifestyle here is not the news. The news here is of conversations with Zack Taylor, with a number of people around, just being around here over the last couple of days, and most notably with Bengals executive vice president Katie Blackburn, who this is really the one time of year we really get to catch up with her. So we just got done a small media contingent of us that's down here, myself, Kelsey Conway from the Inquirer, and Baby from ESPN, and Jeff Hobson from Bengals.com, sat down in a delightful little courtyard with birds. Those that longtime listeners might remember different conversations like this, where there were birds, or there's always some kind of weird sound, or like there could be like someone eating and you could hear the clanking in a restaurant and hear the clanking of like forks and knives. There was a crow sitting above us as we talked in this little courtyard that sounded like it might be a disapproving Bengals fan. Every time Katie was saying something important, it would be like some Bengals fan in the form of a crow would be like, "Caw, no, caw." It was killing me, and I was dying laughing at it. But going through the audio, this has happened before down here.
Yeah. It happened in Arizona. There was the kid in the pool. There was birds, but then there was a kid in the pool screaming and yelling. And then the last time I was at the Breakers down there, it was the clanking of the plates. We were sitting right outside of the restaurant. So there's always something going on in the background at these talks.
Because of that, we kind of put a no audio on this. I'm going to sort of be reading you some of what Katie had to say about a number of important topics. There has been a lot on their plate. The Cincinnati Bengals of late, but particularly ownership between the T. Higgins and the Jamar Chase deals, Joe Burrow being vocal, Trey Hendrickson still hanging out here, free agency not going maybe as actively as some would have liked, everything that's happening at guard. And then, of course, the big story being the status of the stadium, the lease negotiations, which the clock is really beginning to tick on those. A lot of interesting things said on all those topics. I have a story up specifically on everything said about the stadium that is up on The Athletic right now. If you want to go read that, please do. It gets more into the details of what Katie had to say, the entire state of stadium issues across the state, across the NFL, which is all very interesting right now. And so you can go check that out. But we're going to talk a little bit about it here. Also, Zack Taylor spoke at the coaches breakfast on Monday. I have a few clips of some of the interesting things that he had to say there. We're going to get to that. Also have a story up on that, specifically on things that were said in the idea of not signing another guard before the draft, which became a major talking point. Entire story in the background of that and where that entire position sits up on The Athletic. Jay, you have a story up as well about guard stuff. People go check that out at Sports Illustrated. I hope everybody goes and reads that. We'll get into it a little bit here, but we want to kind of tick through some of the main bits of news. The Growl Gals are going to join us here in a little bit. They've got owners meetings questions, and we're going to get to a little bit of Jay's got stats. I got a stat. I got a stat for you, Jay, as well today, and we'll see. We might even have some ARBiES here from down here. Jay, let's start with this. I want to just start with the lease and stadium situation and the things that Katie Blackburn had to say about that. Just for background, it's convoluted, and I know people don't always like to hear about it, but it's a really important topic right now. You have the Bengals currently in a state where June 30th of this year is the deadline for them to utilize the first of five existing 2-year rolling extensions on the negotiations to renovate, extend, and figure out what that next deal looks like. Of course, back in September, the county put forth these renderings you probably saw of what they think it could look like, a renovation that connects the banks, and there's a new training facility, all this fancy stuff. Well, I don't know how much the Bengals have interest in that, but bridging the gap between what the Bengals want and what the county, what that was proposed there, they're talking back and forth, trying to figure it out. These contentious emails that are going on between the county and ownership sort of surfaced as well in January. So that showed that there are some issues going on there. All of this leads to say this June 30th date is a real inflection point to what's going to happen next. And you have an NFL landscape where teams are moving and renovating and doing stuff everywhere. Chicago's looking at Arlington Heights. The Browns are, everyone's suing each other. The city's suing the Browns. The Browns are suing the city back. They're trying to move to Brook Park to build this mecca. Kansas City's talking about moving to Kansas because they can't get Arrowhead figured out because Missouri voters voted it down. You've got renovations in downtowns happening in Carolina, in Baltimore, in Jacksonville. Tennessee's building a new $1 billion stadium. Buffalo's building a new $1 billion stadium. Like, this stuff is happening everywhere, and the Bengals are another one that's really in a weird situation. Okay, that's the background, Jay. Did I sum it up? It's a lot. It's a lot to try to pack in. I think we've got it summed up. That
it is a lot.
It is a lot. That brings us to today. So today, we're essentially the question being, where are things, right? And the most basics. And this was kind of maybe one of the takeaways. Katie had to say, we wish there was a little more urgency and it was moving faster. I do believe that the county would like to get something done. We just seem to be very slow in making it happen. She sort of set the tone of it as it's neutral. She's not optimistic. She's not negative about it. It feels neutral. It just feels like they want it to be going faster. It's not going fast enough. I think they feel that clock ticking. She said, we've all been working really hard on looking at a lease extension and renovations that might be a part of that. And so there are a lot of great ideas out there. It's just finding a way to bring it all together, make sure everyone's on the same page and pulling together. We seem to have a lot of work to do to make that actually happen. Again, not optimistic, not necessarily pessimistic, but I would say concerning from just listening to the tone, even though it's neutral. That's concerning to me when you consider how close June 30th is.
Yeah, I mean, it's 3 months, basically 3 months from Sunday, this past Sunday. The thing is, it's not end of the world. It's not Armageddon when June 30th hits. That's when they can kick in the 2-year rollovers, and that's when if the rollovers don't kick in, then the Bengals would be free to look elsewhere, to look to other counties in the area and do like what you were talking about, Cleveland, going to the suburbs and doing something like that. That's not what the Bengals want to do. I'm sure that's not what the county wants to happen. But like you just read, Katie, the Bengals are not happy with, I mean, I'm sure they want to get this done as soon as possible. They got dragged for dragging their feet on the T and Jamar things. This is a little bit different. This is something they are desperately wanting to get done as soon as possible, and they're kind of on the other end now, where the other side doesn't seem to be in the hurry that they would like them to be, and it doesn't feel, again, like it's going to be cataclysmic if nothing is done by June 30th, but that is when that deadline kicks in to start the rollovers.
And that's the point. I mean, if if they can't get it done, the urgency certainly changes, and the entire tone of all of this changes. And the end question that everybody would say is, okay, we get all the details, we hear all of these things, and there's all of this. Okay, you want to get a deal, and I get it. What does it mean? Are the Bengals leaving downtown? Right? And I kind of wanted to very bluntly sort of ask that question. So the point was that after that date, they could be free on June 30th of 2026 when the lease officially expires, to then be able to leave. She said, we could, I guess, go wherever we wanted after this year if we didn't pick up the option. We'll see. Like I said, all these things will be done in due course. We're having discussions. So we're hopeful that the county is thinking about it a lot too and wants to get it addressed in a way that would be beneficial to both of us. At that point, I just sort of asked the question, look, if a deal can't be reached with the county, is there a possibility that the team would be entertaining the idea of moving to another county in Ohio or Kentucky? Katie Blackburn said, quote, "We love where we are. I'm a big proponent of being downtown. I think that's a great thing for the city. I think the location of the stadium right now is good. I think our stadium obviously needs to continue to be maintained appropriately, and you want to keep it at a certain level. That's important just so we're competitive with others. At the end of the day, I guess we're playing it one day at a time. We'll just have to see where it all goes." I asked if she'd heard from other counties, and she said, we could. It's not where we are focused at the moment. So there wasn't any, we would never,
Right.
it's hard to, you can't say that.
Right.
Look at what's happening around the NFL. Look at what has happened here in this county. Like, you have to find the deal that works for both sides. And if they can't, they have to start thinking about what those other options are. Maybe there are some, maybe there aren't. As she said, they're focused right now on trying to get this done. And I think that's where the sense of concern about the lack of urgency is coming from.
And I mean, how many times have we said it? You say it all the time. Deadlines make deals, and it's ticking toward 3 months, and it does feel at some point there's got to be a little bit more urgency from the county. But there's so many other things that go into it where it's a give and take. It's like any other negotiation, and I know the county. There are facets of the county personnel that aren't happy with the whole original lease, and it just seems like this is going to go down to the end, and there's going to be a lot of give and take. And I think it's something that people should keep an eye on over the next 3 months.
No doubt about that. I'm not going to go calling them the Boone County Bengals yet. I'm not going to go there yet. But look, it's certainly when you hit the domino, it's the meme of the guy hitting the one tiny domino that ends up being the giant one. I mean, when you look a few dominoes down the line, you could see if things go sideways in this and it doesn't get past this giant gap that it sounds like kind of currently exists, you start talking about some of those types of things that they don't want to be talking about, and certainly the county does not want to be talking about either. All right. If you guys have more questions about this, there's more details that are in my story. Please go read that at Athletic. We kind of get a little bit more to that if you want to dive a little bit more into things in terms of state funding and some of the other things said about some of the logistics about how she thinks that this could work. That's all in there. Make sure you go give that a read. Let's shift to a couple of other. Obviously, this was not the only topic that we covered down here. We also talked a little bit about these contracts and how this has kind of gone down. There's been so much national and local narrative about how the Bengals handle contracts, how they have not handled them well, or should they need to be looking to get these deals done earlier and they wouldn't have to take it on the chin. And I thought, it was kind of an interesting answer from Katie when I sort of asked that about, do you guys look at this as, is there an advantage in your eyes to why you wait to get some of these done? And she said, quote, "As it turned out, there was an advantage for these guys because they ended up getting more money." They've had to do something to earn that. As the market changes, I guess at the end of the day, you're working more off the current value as time goes along. I guess at some point in the future, maybe it goes down, maybe it goes up. We talked about getting something done, and the bigger jump in the cap this year was maybe a little unexpected. That gave you a little bit more flexibility than you thought you were going to have, and maybe a little bit more of an opportunity to get it worked out the way you did. She went on to say that, this hasn't, I asked basically if it has changed their philosophy going through this about maybe trying to go in earlier more often. She said, well, we talked to them in other years, is a quote. I don't have any regrets. You just have to keep moving forward with what you have and make the best of it. I hope they're feeling good about how it turned out for themselves. Hopefully that will have an impact on how they play and perform up to that. I don't have any regrets stood out to me from this, Jay. I thought of all the things, I thought that, look, I think it was an admittance that this was a risk they took. Sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down. This one, it all went up, and they had to take it on the chin. I don't have any regrets. I thought that was an interesting answer from Katie.
That is an interesting answer, and I wasn't there. Was she speaking specifically about how much they had to pay those guys, or was she speaking about the whole process and missing out on free agency? Because it feels like there should still be some regrets about missing out on free agency, because that cap, she said flexibility with the cap, and that was announced weeks before they got this done, the cap number. And it just, I know there's a lot of Bengal fans frustrated that they could have got this done earlier and then had been more active and done more in free agency to do things that they needed to do.
Yeah. I mean, if you put together some of the timelines on this, you get the official new cap number, and maybe that part of, it sounds like a part of what did help turn the tide with T, something that we know that didn't feel like it was maybe going to happen, and then all of a sudden really came together quickly. Maybe that was also a big part of it when that news actually did come down to sort of change the direction of things a little bit. Certainly it does sound like that was part of it. She wasn't talking specifically about the free agency thing. That piece kind of came in a little bit better later. And I want to bring you another thing said about that. And the question sort of being, did the wide receiver deals change what you thought you could do in free agency? And she said, quote, that did shift it. There's no question. We decided we were going to work on the T and Jamar pieces that definitely had an effect on what you were able to do otherwise. Again, the cap going up gave us the perspective maybe we could get that part done. There's always a trade-off. So for those that have sort of speculated or thought or surmised by looking at how it all went down, that the decision to do T and Jamar did take them out of free agency, there it is. That's putting it that way, that they viewed it. I know all the capologists out there, like, you didn't have to be like that, right? I just trying to relay what's said. They viewed it as doing these deals took us out of being really active in free agency and approaching things like, well, we know what's out there, right? Whether it be linebacker or a pass rusher or a guard or whatever. And so there it is, plain as day.
But they could have had their cake and eaten it too, had they got that done. Had they got Jamar and T done as much as they paid them and structured it a little differently than they did. I feel like they still could have got those both done and still did a little bit more in free agency. And she's kind of painting it as it was an either or proposition. And that's just their philosophy. That's, they didn't want to structure it that way. They didn't want to kick the can down the road and do the lower cap hit this year and clear some of that space. But at least if you had gotten those two done a little bit sooner, you'd had the flexibility to maybe tinker with it a little bit and had some more room to add another piece or two.
One more last thing on that, because I know a lot of talk has happened around guarantees and things like that. We sort of her thoughts about guarantees and how that has become a big part of the fights that they have now with current contracts. And she said, quote, the bigger thing that didn't exist back then were guarantees. As I look at it, I want it always to be years where the money each year is going to be going to the guys on the field. You would hate to have guarantees undermine that in the future. We'll keep paying attention to it and hopefully keep it where that doesn't become an issue. And we'll see where it goes, because it can affect more than the player with the contract, obviously. That's something that we've talked about a lot. Their lack of willingness to do guarantees comes with the idea of they want to keep each year the dead cap conversation, how the Bengals hate dead cap and they want to feel like all this money is going to their team on the field. This is their philosophy. This is kind of emphasizing that a little bit, her take on the guarantees, which I know is always a point of contention as Bengals fans and people that analyze the way they do business look at it.
Yeah, but again, it was they did it. They did the guarantees. It's a positive step for a baby step, if you will.
All right. On that note, that touches on a lot of what Katie Blackburn had to say with us here on Tuesday. And we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the things that happened on Monday and other things heard here at the league meetings when we come back on the other side of our great friends, the Growl Gals. All right, now is that time to bring back our great friends, the Growl Gals, Kelsey Kenter, Carrie Matucci of Bar 3 Marymount. What's going on, Growl Gals? How we doing?
We're good. Yeah. We're ready for the weather to warm up a little bit. I'm getting a little tired of this doom and gloom outside.
Yeah, I can't speak to that. I could turn my camera here out to 85 degrees in Palm Beach right now. I won't do that. I don't want to rub it in. But we're not going to do that right now. I do make sure everybody remembers Wooster Pike down near Kroger and 50 West is where you can find Bar 3. Their studio. It is awesome down there. You can contact them at Bar 3 Marymount on Instagram or Marymount at bar3.com. That's BARRE3.com. I wanted to ask you guys a question to start out here, if you don't mind.
Okay.
We were talking about this on Who Dey Light, Mark and I were, and we were talking about how do you give a gift to my wife? Like if I just want it's a birthday's coming up or Mother's Day is right around the corner, I just like to be good husband guy and like just give a gift on a day that there's no reason to, right? But if I want to do that, how do I not come off like a jerk? It'd be like hey, here's a membership to a bar studio. You're gonna love it, I promise. But how do I come off not looking like a jerk?
Right. Because at face value, you're just gifting exercise, and that
yeah. Even though I know it's much more than that, but I feel like I take the heat on the first impression.
Yeah, it's all about, I think, the delivery and how you're talking about this opportunity to your wife. So men kind of stereotypically have these hobbies that allow them to be active and allow them to be out of the house by themselves for a long time. So I'm thinking golf, right? We've got the Thursday night golf club. We've got Saturdays, Sundays. We're gone 4, 5, 6 hours at a time, right? And that's great for the guys. I love that for them. I don't love it so much for the people who are at home, caring for the children, minding the household.
The golf widow.
The golf widow.
The golf widow.
And this is an opportunity for your wife to have something similar where they can go and have some physical activity. Yes, that's part of it. And of course that benefits their physical health, but it also is the social piece that goes along with them leaving the house, going and spending an hour to themselves with other people who are on similar journeys and similar paths that they are. For example, like Paul, your wife has been coming to the studio with her good friend, and it just kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone. You get your physical movement in, which is going to make you feel better, make you feel happier, more connected, more peaceful, calm, all of that good stuff. But then you also get a moment to be with a friend who maybe outside of the studio, or maybe it's a friend that you made at the studio.
Yeah. The acronym for golf is Go Out, Leave Family. And so you just have to consider that's what you're going to do when you're going to Bar 3. You're just going to go out, leave family.
Right. So I think just approaching it is like, listen, I have this thing that I get to do, and it really brings me a lot of joy. And I want you to have that same opportunity to go do something for yourself a couple times a week. That's just for you.
Yeah, just for you.
That's awesome. I love that. Go out, leave family. I'm not going to, that's a great one. I'm going to have to make sure that, I say that out of my wife's ears, although it's probably too late for that. All right. Do you guys have, I'm here at the owners meetings. You guys got something for me? Any owners meetings thoughts?
Yeah. Okay. So the Bengals have a history at owners' meetings of being either the only ones or one of the few teams of dissenting votes. Recently, it was like, they were the only ones to dissent on allowing private equity investment in NFL teams. Why is that? What's the story there?
So they're just different. There's just something about liking to be on the record as not agreeing with some. This goes all the way back to replay back in the 90s, and they would be the only one against replay. And it's just Mike Brown and the ownership group here, they tend to view the league through a different lens. There are other families that are family owned football operations, but more of them, the vast majority, are these, they view the league differently as more of a way to make money and a view of another one of their big businesses. And so there tends to be a little bit more forward thinking, go with the flow, playing the politics type of side to a lot of these, really 75 to 80% now of the league ownership. This small group, which includes the Bengals, of people who are football families. This is how we made our money, was in football. They hold on a little bit to what they believe football to be, care more about what that's about, and don't mind having their opinion heard. The Bengals certainly have always not minded their opinion being heard and don't have a problem with being viewed differently than anybody else. They've gone along more recently than used to. There hasn't been as much of when the vote comes back and it says 31-1. I know I need to go find ownership and ask them about why every single thing. That hasn't happened as much as it used to, but you did used to happen more. It's mostly just because they just kind of, as one of the last remaining football families, kind of view it a little bit different and aren't afraid to put that vote out there just so it's known that they didn't agree. Whereas everyone else just says, okay, we're not going to win. Just go with the flow. We don't need to draw attention to our debate. I think they're more, let's go ahead and not afraid to draw attention to the debate on that we were against this. On that note, Growl Gals, this has been great. Do we have a visitor?
We've got little ones escaping the basement. So
it's all right. Let them out. Let them in. Bring the little ones in. I love it. They need to make more appearances. It's TV time. Okay,
it's true.
Put them out there.
All right. Well, we'll stay tuned to see what they dissent on this week.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Growl Gals, Kelsey and Carrie, make sure you go check them out. Hit them up. Mention the Growler for a special discount on a 2-week unlimited package. You have that, the gift that keeps on giving here. You can go to the QR code. There's links to their site there. Marymont at bar3.com. Bar3 Marymont on Instagram. Send them a DM. Get hooked up. New clients get the first class free. No code required. Make sure you go check them out. Thanks, gals. We will talk to you next week.
Bye, Paul.
All right, great to catch up with the Growl Gals and family. I need more. I want kids to come running out of the basement. They said emerged holding a vacuum cleaner out of the basement. I need more of that. I want kids emerging out every single week, every Growl Gals segment. I need that. Thanks to the Growl Gals for joining us. Okay, Jay, let's leave today's conversation with Katie behind now, and let's talk a little bit about some things that we heard from Zack Taylor on Monday morning at the coach's breakfast. So, I mean, I would say there wasn't necessarily a ton of breaking new ground here. I mean, it was a lot of building off some things that we kind of already knew, but there were some interesting things said. Zack showed up 10 minutes before anybody else it was supposed to start at 7:45. He showed up at 7:35. And I don't think he had realized everybody else had left and he was the last one in there. He stood up when it kind of just ended of its own volition and looked around and was like, oh, everybody's gone. He just went for a 55-minute stretch straight and was just kind of on a roll. And so credit to him for doing that and for putting the time in it. He shed a lot of light on some different stuff. Jay, there's a ton of stuff out there on this. Did you have anything? I picked out about 3 clips that I want to play for you guys. But Jay, first, did you have anything of what you've kind of seen or heard that's out there that stood out to you?
Yeah, one of the things that really stood out is something that you guys are going to hear on one of the clips a little bit later, but one that wasn't on the clips is, and how this works is, it's not just the Bengals reporters that sit at the table and interview Zach. Like, guys, reporters, girls jump in from all over, and just, if they're working on a story, they might try to hit 15 of the AFC coaches and get their questions in, and then they go to the next one. And I can't remember who it was, but someone asked about when you become a head coach and picking who those friends are that you want to take with you to be part of that staff. And I thought it was really interesting that Zach said I don't know if he said his intention was, but he could have brought Ben Johnson, who was the hot candidate, the offense coordinator for the Lions, and now the head coach of the Bears. He could have brought him in as part of his staff. And if you remember, when he came in, there was a few coaches that the Bengals organization kind of said you need to hang on to. Rob Livingston was one that was the holdovers from the Marvin Lewis staff, and Dan Pitcher was one. And Zach didn't know Dan Pitcher, but he listened and he believed that this is a bright young coach and you really should consider retaining him. And he did, and look where he is at. I mean, he could be a head coach next year. At this time, has really kind of ascended into one of the hot candidates on offensive minds. And I just thought that was really interesting that had he said, I trust you that this guy's a good coach, but I don't know him, I'm going to bring in Ben Johnson instead. What that would have looked like with Zach, Brian Callahan, and Ben Johnson running this offense for the first few years of his tenure here. And, Ben was the wide receiver coach at Miami. That's where Zach was before he went to LA. And Dan Campbell was there at that time. And so Dan Campbell brought Ben Johnson as the wide receivers coach at Miami, and just brought him to Detroit as a quality control. That's in 2019. He's a quality control, and now he's a head coach. It's an amazing rise, and it's a fun what might have been had Ben come here instead of Dan Pitcher.
There's so many people, when you get connected and you start getting into coaching trees, it's fascinating how much, people are interconnected now with Zack Taylor. And you get into the McVay tree and the Shanahan tree. Brian Callahan is technically the only head coach that's a quote, if we're going trees and branches, but interconnectivity is everywhere between all those people that were on that Miami staff, Dan Campbell, Ben Johnson. You go to all of the McVays, LaFleur's, Callahan's. Like it seems like a third of the league now is full of people that have direct connectivity to Zack Taylor and that whole group of sort of young emerging offensive coaches that took over the league. You're seeing that everywhere. But yeah, the sliding doors on Ben Johnson is certainly fascinating. Okay, so a big thing that came of this was talk about what's going on with guards. It wouldn't be a Bengals podcast if people weren't bemoaning and getting mad about guards. It's what you do. That's what makes you beautiful, Bengals fans. And so I just this was a little bit of Zack Taylor talking about how play style can help with offensive line improvement and sort of where that is at, and trying to help the offensive line.
Zach, Pitch was talking about finding ways to help the line better next year. How do you approach something like that? Like, what's the process?
Our overall team play style has got to be better. We put ourselves in a position earlier in the game to be able to call the game where we need to do it. And so that's, getting stops early in the game on defense, where the offense can go put points on the board and play with the lead and have some control. And that allows us to take the pressure off the defense. That allows us to run the ball more and call different play actions. And just too often we were in the second half, every possession was do or die, and when it's do or die, we've got our area we turn to, and as much as anybody, and certainly there's ways you can play that take the pressure off the team, but again, it's like what came first, the chicken or the egg? Let's get an early lead and be able to call the game the way we want to, and we've had years where we've been able to do that.
Can you do scheme stuff with that? Is that a thing?
Absolutely.
Or inevitably, is it like, look, guys got to win?
No, absolutely. It's both. Guys have to be able to win one-on-ones, but at the same time, there's scheme things that we have in our arsenal that we call that you'd like to call more of. You know, when you've got a 7-point lead or 10-point lead, as opposed to being down 3 or tied in the fourth quarter. And so again, there's some things that you can do to dictate to the defense maybe a little differently than we were able to do at times last year.
So the game situation.
The game situation helps certainly, yeah. And again, it's I'm always looking to continue to improve to be able to help everybody on the offense and take pressure off the offensive line, because we do put a lot of pressure on those guys. And when you got a quarterback that's as accurate and sees as well as we do and the receivers we have, then you know, oftentimes a great way to do it is get as many eligibles out as you can. And when you're doing that, there's only so many protections you can call. But we certainly do recognize that you got to take the pressure off the linemen, and there's some things that we can continue to do more of that will be able to help that.
Do you feel like you now have you have 2 open guard spots? Do you feel like you have your starters on the team already, or is that a position that you feel like you guys are going to keep adding to?
I think we've got competition there. It'd be foolish of me to speak before the draft. You know, we'll let the draft shake out, and then I'll give you a better answer after the draft.
Are you open to still more free agent options at those guard positions, or is that probably you've added?
I think right now at guard we'll get to the draft and then evaluate where we're at from there.
That last comment sent the Bengals Twitter on fire. And it's people say, "What do you mean no more guards?" I think, you know, the idea there is, let's see where this goes. You know, let's that the guys that are out there now, with the understanding of the Brandon Sheriff situation is kind of not happening immediately. The guys that are out there now are no different than the guys they have here in the building already. You can sense, you can feel with the fiber of every word that you have heard them say, and that you kind of heard here in the week, that a premium pick on a guard is coming. Someone that will be capable of starting week 1 and holding down that position, whether it comes at 17 or whether it comes at 49 or whatever, that's coming. So be ready for that and understand the priority of that is high. You can tell that from listening to this, and I think then you see what's out there. Then maybe you're revisiting a Brandon Sheriff situation. Then maybe you're seeing, okay, is that enough? If you use 17 overall on Kelvin Banks, let's say, and I mean he's coming in, he's starting day 1, and you love it, right? And the other side being a competition between Patrick and Ford and Volson, and Jackson Kirkland or whatever, is something that, you know, you can get away with. And I think they say, okay, that feels okay for them. And I think that's why they're saying, let's get to the draft. Let's see where it goes and see if more aggressive moves need to be taken after that.
Yeah. And it's kind of 2 schools of thought where, yeah, you spend a premium pick on a guard, and it's someone that you expect to be able to step in there and be a starter on day 1, but they've missed on these guys in the past too. And you know, Jackson Carman was a premium pick, and that didn't work out. And so there's concern there. But you mentioned earlier the story I did on guards. I went back and looked, and you know, over the last 10 years, there's been 15 different guards that have been all pros. And you go back and look what those guys did, the elite of the elite, and what they did their rookie years. Nobody comes in and sets the world on fire at that position. And Quentin Nelson was the only one. Well, he was the only one inside of the top 20 in pass blocking grade by PFF. And I know PFF isn't the end all be all when it comes to evaluating, but it's a good baseline to use when they're grading all these guys. And the average pass blocking grade for a rookie draft pick was 49th. It's just, it takes these guys a while. And so, yeah, you hope a guy that you take in the first round, second round is going to be able to come in and be a starter, but that's just the first step. That's just beating out the other guys that are in camp right now. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to come in and be really, really a top tier guard. And then the other side of that is, do you have to be? We talk about the defense all the time. You just got to be average with everything else that's on this offense as far as skill players, as far as the offensive line, the twin towers on the end, Ted Karras in the middle. You just need, you would love for a guard to come in and be great, but you just we go back to the no donkeys effect. Just come in and be solid, and that's all they're asking for. And maybe they get it, and maybe they don't. They're going to spend the pick on it. They better hope they hit on it.
They better hope they hit on it, and they haven't. And one other thing that I thought in my guard story that I have was Zack Taylor being, admitting, look, there's a lot of truth there when I was questioning sort of their failure to draft quality offensive linemen, particularly beyond that first round. Which brings me to Paul's got stats for you here, Jay, which I had in the story. The last offensive lineman the Bengals drafted and then gave a second contract to was Clint Bowling in the fourth round in 2011. Clint Bowling, who's been retired for half a decade from the NFL, is the guy. They've had 20 offensive linemen they have selected since that pick, and none have gotten a second contract from this team. Now, some are not eligible yet. Maybe Amarius Mims breaks that streak. Some, signed with other teams. Kevin Zeitler, they didn't keep here. But it wasn't that he was, because he wasn't good enough. There's exceptions, but the vast majority of this is just swing and a miss. And of course, the 2021 draft, that was 3 strikes and you're out in terms of Frank Pollock, I guess, in this case. And now you bring in Scott Peters. Maybe he can be part of helping the answer be different, but the pressure is really on to come and get this right. And you can sense that. I mean, I think you could sense that this week down here from them, that one, they don't feel like they're in a disastrous spot. I think they feel okay with where they're at, is the theme that you kind of get about that position, that there's overreaction happening outside of the building about the guard position, but an acknowledgement they got to get it right with this draft pick. And if they do that, they should be fine. And I probably land somewhere in agreement with that, but that's a big if.
Yeah, and one asterisk to your stat there, he wasn't a draft pick, and maybe it's more impressive, but getting Trey Hopkins in undrafted free agency and then giving that guy a second contract. Now, it wasn't this massive, 3-4 year extension, but that was a guy they did hit on. He just wasn't a draft pick. They brought him in as an undrafted free agent guy, but the vast majority of these guys have not, and maybe that's what they're counting on with Scott Peters, and not just the front office getting the right guy, but the coaching staff developing these guys that they bring in.
All right. So speaking of drafting, another thing that I kind of wanted to touch on, and I'll be writing more about this as we kind of get closer to the draft as well, is the idea of getting back to drafting character and the Jermaine Burton effect, maybe we'll call it here. And so I asked this question, and here's a little bit of the discussion about drafting character and what it means for this team and where they're at, considering where they've been and some of the issues that they've had with it in recent years.
Zack, you guys have taken calculated risks with off-field stuff in the draft in recent years. Some hit, some maybe don't. Did those affect future drafts? Like when you
Never.
Do you enter this saying, can we get back to ball-loving, culture, captain guys? Is that something, a conversation that actually happens?
No, I think we talk through every prospect. Every human has their flaws and warts and strengths, and so we talk through everybody. And I can appreciate that there's been times maybe you've taken cleaner guys and guys you haven't. Like I said, we're always on board with everybody we bring in the building. And so it's on all of us to make sure we get the most out of every player we've got. Guys that we add in this draft, guys we have in the building currently. Everyone's on board, and we got to use every resource we can to make sure we get the most and help those guys become the best football player and the best human they can be. And so, again, we put a lot of time and energy into making sure that happens.
Having more of those types of guys, can that be something that helps grow? We're talking about the cohesiveness, the collaboration,
Sure.
that sense of coming into the season.
No, I mean, we want to put a lot of pressure on our veterans that we believe in to help these guys grow as well. And so I think now as my career has evolved, there's a lot more of those conversations with the veterans where I'm maybe a little more transparent about what I want with some of these younger guys. And for it not to always come from me or the position coach, it needs to come from you and you and you. And these guys have always been on board. A lot of times they beat me to the punch already. Coach, we've already had that conversation. So that's what I appreciate about the guys that we've got in the building. When you got 90 guys going into training camp and 53 on the really 69 for the year, you're not everyone's exactly how you see it being all the time, and so you've got to have a strong locker room that will help keep everybody in line and moving in the correct direction and helping them grow. I don't need perfect people to walk into the locker room as a rookie. I just need them to be willing to grow and evolve and do things the way that we believe it needs to be done. And when you're willing to do that, those are sometimes the guys you end up being that proudest of and the happiest for when they take that next step, because you saw maybe the immaturity when they got here and where they've evolved to. And there's countless players that we all know are household names that we know and love that their first year, they wouldn't want a book written on them about how their whole offset, how they were maybe late to a meeting or missed a walkthrough, or I got plenty of those stories someday with their approval, to put in a story somewhere.
I'm here for the book, first of all.
Screw the approval. Just write it.
That's right. I know. I'm here. If you need like a ghostwriter, we need to like get into a forward situation. I'm fine. I'm here to write it. I'm here to say that I raise my hand. I raise my hand for that one. That said, I like the no, that never happens. I think there's an acknowledgement that yeah, obviously it is part of the conversations that they're having right now about the need to find that and understanding that the importance of leaning into that and how much success they've had with it.
Yeah, and it's a good point what he said. And this is kind of the conversation a couple years ago after they made that Super Bowl run, where okay, is the culture in place now where you can take some risk on these guys and hope that these veterans are going to bring them along, and that's what they thought they were doing with Jermaine Burton. It's like, oh, you get him in here and you get him around Jamar and T, and they do everything the right way. And Troy Walters is this incredible coach, and they will bring him along. And sometimes it just doesn't happen, but I don't know how you can not, I don't want to say feel burned, but you have to take that into account when you start looking at guys in this year's draft, because there are some guys that would hit them pretty well that may not have huge red flags, but they have them to some extent. And just like Jermaine Burton was just kind of a weird situation where it wasn't nothing obvious. It was just the way people kind of is like, he's a little bit different. And so I do think that it's something that they have to take into account, because I don't know how many times we can say it, but when you're spending all this money on these big stars, you've got to hit on these draft picks. And it's not just hit on them as players, it's hit on them as people that are going to be able to be someone you can count on in this organization, in the locker room, on the field, all of it.
Taking those chances has bit them, and not having the guys that care enough that are about it, and you're taking chances on guys figuring that out, and it has bit them. And I think it comes to the strategy of doubles versus home runs, right? I mean, Duke Tobin is supposed to be a doubles hitter, and I don't know. There's been some home run swings lately that have been swings and misses, and so you've got to weigh that, and it feels like time for them to hit doubles again, and not worry so much about taking the bigger risks. When you need to hit with stability, you need to hit by maybe taking safer picks, and I think that's part of the conversation they're having right now. Okay, one last thing from Zach that I want to get to, and there's lots more they're going to get. I'm going to have a notebook coming later this week because, again, 55 minutes. There's a lot you can parse through with this and everything else that went on this week. Starting fast, of course, always a topic right now. And what does that mean? What does that look like? I thought Zack Taylor was really interesting talking about the offseason program and how to get this team starting fast rather than starting behind the eight ball.
Just again, with a lot of young players coming in, whether it be rookies, second-year players, third-year players, that we're really counting on. And I don't think we've had bad team cohesiveness, but I just want more of it. So find more ways to be collaborative as a team in team meeting settings and competition settings, so that when we come out of the offseason program, man, Joe Burrow can tell you about the new rookie such and such we got. He can tell you a lot about him, and the rookie can tell you a lot about Orlando Brown and the journey he's been on. So just I think I want to go into training camp where these guys really know and understand. And, we're fortunate last year to build a new locker room in the offseason, but the offseason was a little disjointed because guys were housed in different parts of the stadium, because that's what you have to do when you redo your locker room. There's really no perfect way to do it. And so this year I'm excited to have everybody in the same locker room, everyone get a chance to really know these free agents and rookies and build that bond. So when we come out of, because the X's and O's, we'll teach it to them. There's only so much you can do on the field to really improve yourself. And so it's more about the team bonding and the cohesiveness going into training camp for us.
So what is that? Ropes courses, trust
No.
falls?
It's just it's more football. It's more the playbook and the football IQ and the situational stuff. Letting guys be involved in that. And as coaches, we're going to do that all season. We're going to get up in front of the room and explain it. And there will be some times maybe the players can get up there and join into the fun and explain it a little bit. So I think it's just good. It'll build the football IQ and the situational awareness, and also get to know your teammates a little bit better.
What's the argument against more good versus good competition in the OTAs portion? Is that
wearing pads? I mean, the whole thing is just the lack of pads. You have helmets on, and so you can't go full speed, number one. So we go good on good, 7-on-7.
Yeah.
That's about all you can really do. We do the walkthroughs good on good, but the full speed is just so limited to what you can do. And what I found is our guys come out of it feeling beat up when you do 11-on-11, and you got no protection on your shoulders, and so now you're trying to get your body back for the month of July to get ready for training camp, and you spent the whole offseason getting yourself in the best shape of your life, and then you're kind of hitting the reset button a little bit in year one and year two the way we did it. So that shaped how we practice. I've really felt great about how we've come out of the offseason in terms of the preparation. We just got to do a great job in training camp, getting ourselves ready for the first game of the season.
All right, there is Zack Taylor as he talks a little bit about the offseason program. Look, it sounds pretty clear, right? Okay, the cohesiveness and collaboration of the team during training camp is going to be, or during the offseason is going to be a thing that you're not going to see more on-field work necessarily, but an admittance that wasn't where it needed to be. And, we saw them do the go early to LA last year. And it's like, okay, well, he's clearly felt like they were fighting uphill on trying to connect this team a little bit last year. But yeah, the preseason, them playing in the preseason, to me is the big story about all of this. That's going to be the biggest change.
Yeah, for sure. That will be the biggest change. But I think it's important what he's saying about the cohesion and about how disjointed it was last year. You didn't really think about it, but the way those it was basically 3 separate locker rooms. And you had the big guys, the offensive line, defensive line in one, and you had the skill guys, DBs and wide receivers, running backs in another one. And then you had the rookies, the ones you don't want to separated. They were in their own little area, and that's where they don't get to be with these veterans. And I did see some guy, Orlando Brown would move from his area to the other area. But even in doing that, it was so cramped and so crowded that, it's nice to make the gesture to go over there and talk to them, but you're just constantly in the way and moving out of the way as people are going by. So I do think that will help a lot, just having that locker room ready to go and having everybody together in one room. And then you said it flippantly as a joke, the trust falls, the rope ladders. I think there's something to that. Back in the Marvin days, he would give them the last day of OTAs off, and they would do something. One year they went bowling. They went to the Super Bowl, ironically, was the name of the bowling alley. They played sand volleyball one year. They did Olympics one year where they did a bunch of different events. And I mean, the guys love that. And it is team building. It is camaraderie. It is a lot like what you said when they went out to LA a day early, just spending that time together. And if you remember that year they went to the Super Bowl, those guys that were on the winning team had those bowling pin trophies in their locker all year. Like, it meant something to them. And so I think, yes, playing in the preseason to shake off rust and get some snaps is the biggest part of that. But I don't think you should discount what he's talking about, the cohesion and just that the team coming together in the offseason and spending time together.
Yeah, and I do think that comes back to having all the right guys in the building and not the distractions that splinter. Man, they splinter everything. They are toxic from within. Andrew Whitworth was great on that when we talked to him mid-season about how the effect that stuff can have to a locker room. I think the Bengals felt that last year, and I think they're recognizing the ability to go forward without it this year. Trey Hendrickson notwithstanding, which no updates necessarily from Katie on that today or from Zach the other day, other than to point out that, look, I mean, it wasn't the most encouraging. It was, look, we'll see where it goes. It certainly didn't sound urgent when it came to that. Something feels like it's going to happen immediately with Trey Hendrickson. A lot of we'll see where it goes, and that Trey is going to have to figure out what number feels right to him. And so we'll see if he arrives there or we arrive talking about this a lot longer. All right, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll get to more stuff this week. Of course, we'll have another episode coming up soon. It is, I got a flight to catch in the morning, and I'll come back to beautiful Cincinnati, Ohio. And then our good friend Mark Shalafo will be in beautiful Hamilton, Ohio on Thursday night. He's doing a set in Hamilton, Jay. And then maybe leading the trek to your front porch before.
Yeah. We went and scouted the venue Friday night after my mom's celebration of life. That's where we all went, was the Hub, which is where Mark's going to play. Great venue. Anybody in Hamilton, Mark is hilarious. I would highly recommend going out there. It's a great place to see a band or a comedian. And I'm going to try to get out there and maybe, I don't want to heckle him, but maybe after he comes off the stage, heckle him a little bit.
Yeah. I do have one ARBiES that I want to give you from just down here.
Yeah, please.
And that is, the absurdity of the league meeting party, of the reception that happens. It's just, I mean, it is the swankiest of the swankiest of things that you'll ever see. It's inside of all the Breakers big ballrooms. There's just delicious food at every single turn, bars everywhere, all, of course, on the NFL's dime, which we appreciate. Thank you to the NFL on that. But you just never know what you're going to see. When I was coming in to walk in, I almost accidentally knocked shoulders with Roger Goodell. He was behind a column and coming out from behind a column as I was going past said column, and had to narrowly avoid hitting Raj on the way in. And then as soon as I get in, I get a drink and I settle at the table talking to a couple of people, and Guy Fieri comes walking in right up behind me. And I'm like, Guy Fieri's here? What is Guy Fieri doing here? And then fast forward about 30 minutes later, I'm inside hanging out, eating some of the crab cakes, the grouper. I'm just having a great time talking to some people. Serena Williams walks right by us and hangs out and starts talking to a worker who approached her. Serena Williams was here. I'm like, Serena Williams, this is ridiculous. And just walks right by. And I'm just like, this is just so ridiculous. It's just absurd and everything. And that's beyond getting past the amount of course, very, very well-to-do owners and NFL related people. I mean, it is the absolute it's ridiculousness to a T. And I was like, what is going on? I went straight from Roger to Guy Fieri to Serena Williams, and you almost can't avoid it. Just a crazy night, and just a little view of what these events are like when the NFL treats their owners to the best of the best.
It's like when you win the Masters, you get a lifetime invitation back. As Serena Williams was part of the halftime show, she showed up there with Drake, so now she can come to this party anytime she wants.
She did not crip walk across the ballroom floor. No, she just went and politely made her way across it. But anyway, it was great. And thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll get back more onto I know our schedules have been a little wackadoo as we've been dealing with vacations and combine and owners meetings and free agency and everything else. But we are getting back into our draft coverage, which is coming right down the line. We'll continue getting into all of that stuff. We'll probably talk about guards. More. I should say, we will talk more about guards than we somehow already have in some of the top candidates for that and many other positions. And I'll have more insights on stuff that went down at the league meetings that we didn't have time to get to today on Who Day Light with Mark. You can check that out. We'll have that up for you first thing on Friday morning. right. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. Have a good one.